My wife of 10 years, Sarah, was actually at home when I arrived back from work on Wednesday evening. I knew something was not right, and she asked for me to sit at the table because we needed to talk. Oh, that was the first of too many bad conversations I read about. Then she admitted that I must know that she loves me and would never do anything to jeopardize us. I could tell that this is not good, so I looked at her and said, "Alternarasoma?" She took a deep breath. This was turning out very, very poorly. Like I told you, I love you and want to grow old with, but I have decided that I would like to take a lover. Yeah, that took me completely by surprise, and to say I was not happy would be an understatement. So let me get this straight. You love me, you don't want to hurt our relationship, but you want to be with someone else. I asked. Oh, that is a bit crude. I have eyes on a fuck buddy. I never wanted to do anything like that. It was just here and there sort of thing. I will always be honest in this matter. I love you well enough to separate those two things. Sarah smiled. Then if you truly love me like you say, do it for my sake, because this is something I know I have to so. I mean, I just do know why the *****, you would have to think that way, and how in your mind it could not affect us. Have you planned ahead with your lover already? She asserted, we are planning a little getaway for the weekend after next. And a question for you, please try to be honest. How would you respond if I asked for your hand in something so out of the ordinary? I could see her wheels spinning, and I knew she was not going to tell me the truth for two reasons. She would have hit the roof just over that suggestion of my doing something like this. But you tell me and promise to not let it destroy us together with everything else, she said. Because you know damn well that had anyone even whispered such a random thought, you would have lost your mind, I groused. And that she wasn't expecting was the response, "Hey, I never thought you would be mad with me. I thought you would love me enough," said she was the special one to allow that kind of thing. Well, it must be illegal, whatever you were smoking. Think I was going to just give the go-ahead that sure, go fuck this guy. So I'm just supposed to stay at home waiting for you, so you can screw him all weekend. She said, maybe I hadn't thought it all through well enough. You think? Yes, I never paused to think about a few considerations, like perhaps my emotions. Are you going to do this or not? If I say no to it? I don't know. I never really thought you would say no. You didn't plan this out very thoroughly. I tell you what, let me think about this in a few days. You and I can talk about this on Sunday evening after I have the opportunity to gather my thoughts. Tonight you shocked me. I moved to our bedroom and started packing my things into the guest room. What are you doing? It's this. I'd rather not be sharing a bed with you when clearly all that was in your mind just then were other than you and me. After I was in the guest room, I slammed its door. I barely slept, but at least came up with a plan. It was also I then decided that were she to do this, it would be over between us. The following day I emerged at around midday and did not say one single word to Sarah. I called into work for the next 2 days saying it was a personal matter. Then I went to work. I popped 3 voice activation recorders. I placed one beside her phone, another in the bedroom, and a third in her car. Also, I bought another one of those phone tap recorders to wire with our phones. Our next destination, the cell phone provider. Because her phone was in my name, so I could easily request a copy of her telephone charges. I proceeded to check her email accounts while she was still at work. According to me, she had opened one, which I haven't, but with a simple password. At least I had a plethora there that she hadn't already done him yet. So I configured it so redirect to me any email on this account without its knowing that. Last up for the day was some GPS locators. They were pretty diminutive and easy to conceal. I planned to slip one in her wallet because she would definitely take all of money and credit cards with her. One would go with her and the other one in her car. I had a full day, but I had it all arranged so that I could keep track of her. The only other thing that I needed in this vein was to acquire her cell phone and read whatever messages she might have in there. I also wanted to plant the GPS devices in the evening as well. Thankfully, I had access to her email, and sure enough, there were a few compositions between she and Frank Jones. Frank Jones was a colleague, and I wanted to destroy him the way he had destroyed me. The emails left no doubt about it. Saturday, the following weekend, was on. I knew that anything I said would be irrelevant. You will recall my visit to that very well-outfitted divorce lawyer on Friday. I said, then get the ball rolling on a divorce based upon adultery. There was also a man named Frank Jones, and I wanted to sue him. Easy if I proved it. My lawyer. I sent him every email and my phone records. I told them that soon enough they would have audio from me as well. He was delighted and told me he would kick things off straight away. I even gave Sarah the silent treatment when she returned home that evening, and I went out to eat and have a few beers at the bar while she made supper. So I arrive back. She stands up and starts talking to me. I walked right past her and into the guest room, slamming that door. She only had a chance to save our marriage if she called off the plans to Frank, but I didn't think that was going to happen. That was until on Sunday afternoon when she messages me to see if I want a social call. I told her we had to talk, and she sat me down in the kitchen. I went first, and you probably guessed that I do not care for your demand at all. And I have thought long about this, and there is no way that me being okay with it. You told me this would not affect our marriage, but as you can see, it has already taken a heavy toll on us. And why thank you. Well, I can tell you're not very happy. Maybe if you had seen it from my perspective, you would have been slightly more open. I've been feeling like shit as first have I tried to see this through your eyes for once, but then, no matter how I'm mounting this on a plate, it's fuckedup. So my answer has to be no. How could you be so selfish? If you love me, I am the selfish one. You want to be with someone else, and that is actually the most selfish thing I have ever heard of in my whole life. What if I did it anyway? You will face some really heavy punishments of having sex outside our marriage. We promised the same vows a decade ago, and they said you would only be with me. I didn't want you to know, but it's just something that I have to do. Oh well, I suppose this conversation is done. It seems just said to yourself, you need read why the heck not do this. I pushed away from the table and walked to my own house. To their emails, I drove my laptop to a Wi-Fi spot and started watching. She was furious and told him she was going anyway. That was good, he said, because room 125 at the Hilton in Kansas City this Friday and Saturday nights. I instantly had that room booked for Thursday night. This was all becoming far too simple. They also had a date Saturday night. What more likely happened? A fancy dinner, followed by some dancing and hot sex. Sarah replied telling him that she had purchased some sexy lingerie just for their date. I'm never the last to eat him just eating when I'm seeing mails going back and forth. They had moved on to planning their weekend, despite my protest. Check-in was at 3:00, so he would pick her up around 1, or they could leave as soon as possible, because the facility is 2 hours away. I was shocked that he was coming over to the house. I said I may have to evaluate what it was that wanted me in there. I even booked a room for the weekend. It was just similar enough to their own that they could tune in all the signals. I went shopping for things I needed the all days after that. Right before winter testing, I throw a pair of tiny fiber optic HD camcorders into my bag. I had intended to hang them in the room on Thursday, so all was set up for recording their weekend affair. This would be beautiful ammo in my next filing for divorce. I completely ignored her throughout, but the end of Wednesday was when she got past last chance. She would have a final reprieve. If she voted for Frank, it was over. I said, come and sit at the table. Let's talk for a minute. She still had something like a smile on her face. I said, have you thought any more about this? I have, and I continue to feel that. This is the absolute very last time I am going to say any of this. Do yourself a favor and don't ruin what we have to fuck some dude around the corner. This is your final warning, and if you do continue, it will cost you dearly. Frank is going on Friday afternoon, and I will be back Sunday afternoon. I hope we can get over this and move on. So you chose Frank over me? Guess that tells me everything I need to know. Huh. I got up and left the room. I walked into the guest room and, as per usual, slammed the door. I was just not going to let anyone take me down. I had my last divorce, and hell yes, someone was gonna pay for this time. I went to work Thursday morning and told my boss I needed the afternoon off as well as Friday. What was going on, he wanted to know, and I told him that I am just getting ready for my divorce from Sarah. He was sad, but told me he would be there for support, and I could take as much time off that I needed. In fact, I drove to KC Thursday and stayed in their room. I got all the nodes set up and tested everything to ensure it's operational. I needed to get everything so I could walk away with all the proof for divorce, and then I was gonna kick his ass. After reaching my destination, I tested all of the cameras using my laptop and ensured that they were pointing towards proper directions. I sat in one place for a while to allow them time off, and then moved around the lot testing that every single bulb lit up. Everything was perfect. And then I walked down the halls, counting how many doors it would pass that weekend to reach where I was stationed. Again, it was okay. I drove home and thought about the end of my marriage. I had one more stop to make. I went to a gun store and purchased some pepper spray. I was going to use this in order to screw up the kiss cam theme with their intimate date. Sarah was standing in the kitchen when I arrived. She stood looking at me, waiting for a reply. I just walked right past her and did not say anything. I slammed my door again. Sarah walked into my room trying to be friendly. I told her to keep it for Frank, 'cause I didn't need the pity. I walked away from her, and then she disappeared. I do not remember sleeping well that night, but I had everything assembled to finish this off. I woke up like normal Friday morning, and I left without saying a word to her. Went to the lawyer and signed DOS reordered papers, equals agements. I shared with him that I would have all the evidence gathered on Monday and to process her at work in the late afternoon. I demanded they also serve papers to Frank concurrently. Alienation of affection was my great lawsuit against him. I then checked Sarah's never-used GPS, and it said she was at the hair salon. I got into the house, went over to her suitcase, and pulled out all of her sexy new underwear. They were in fact very sexy. I just wished they had been for me. I donned rubber gloves and retrieved my mace from the glove box. I sprayed the inside of her panties and bra cups with it, set everything back in place into her suitcase. This was going to be fun. I emptied each and every single joining bank account, withdrew all the cash it contained, waking to our branch, followed by closing all the credit cards with both names on them. I then returned home to tell my wife goodbye. If it was 12:30, then I knew she would be putting on her new guy. I stepped into the house and saw there was no Sarah. Oh well, she must be upstairs getting ready. I walked to her room and went inside. She is in some of the sexy underwear I had bought her. Her hands flew to her battered breasts, but I told her not be so thick and that I'd already seen yes. She had an amazing new hairstyle, hair styled up to form spiral curls on her head. Makeup was just right, and she wore lingerie kept minimalistic. I had to have my say. Wow, you sure look great. Wish you did put in that effort for me. You know it's not like that. All I want to do is leave it a good impression. You're much more worried about what he thinks than you ever were with me, I repeated. I'm sorry. Just trying to look sexy for a day. Well, you were sexy. You know that I only did was love you _ends_ with. Tilde, tilde, tilde. I know you love me. I walked over to her and held out my left hand. I started to slide rings off her fingers. You broke my heart by the I love you part. This ring I gave to you on the day of our wedlock. We made our vows and pledged to forsake all others. I found that a little helpful, not you. I do not wish to feel the ring I placed on your finger while you were keeping another man's dick erect. I am keeping the engagement ring because it was my mother's. I slipped both rings in my pocket and let her hand go. She looked stunned but didn't argue with me. I won't be here when he comes, but I don't want him to come into my house. You cannot let him in here. If you do, I will castrate him and fix you so no man will ever look at you again. That's a promise. He cannot come into my house. Do you understand? Yes, I will not let him in. That's good. I will be watching. Why are you being like this? Because the love of my life has just trashed that love. I hope this weekend is worth the consequences. Goodbye, Sarah. I turned and walked away from my soon-to-be ex-wife. She was hollering at me as I walked out, but I was done with her. I parked down the street so I could watch. I made sure I was parked where Sarah could see me. If he went in the house, I was going to jail, but they would be hurting worse. Pretty soon his car drove up. He walked up to the door and rang the bell. Sarah opened the door and came right out with her suitcase in hand. She sat it down and put her arms around his neck before giving him a long, deep kiss. As he picked up her suitcase, she looked my way and gave me a smug grin. She sat right next to him in the car and gave me the smug look again as they drove past me. I flicked her off and the smug look disappeared. I went back to my house and changed all the locks and the garage door code. I grabbed the suitcase I had already packed and drove to KC. I checked in, went into my room, and immediately set up my laptop. The camera pointing to the bottom of the bed showed Sarah naked. It was obvious he'd already screwed her. It was also pretty clear that he hadn't lasted too long. He came out of the bathroom. He was naked, and I had to laugh. He had a very small tool. Sarah was accustomed to much more meat than this little thing could deliver. About that time, Frank walked to the bed by Sarah. He was hard again and ready for another go at her. She smiled at him and opened her arms. I laughed when she reached for his little tool. He didn't have to take it easy because I would be surprised if she could even feel that little thing inside her. Wow, did she make a lousy trade. This guy was pitiful. I could see a bit of frustration on her face as he rested. It did not appear like she was going to be very happy with the results of this weekend. She was going to come home frustrated, then get kicked out on her ass the next day. He was soon ready to go again, and he gave her another less than thrilling 4-minute session. He was already done 3 times, and she wasn't even close. This was going better than I had ever hoped it might. I had to quit watching and went out for supper and had a couple of drinks. I left everything recording to have all I might need for the lawyer and also to rub her nose in what a loser she had picked. When I returned, he was asleep, and she was looking even more frustrated. This really was fun after I got over the pain of losing my wife. I went to bed thinking about how much fun I was going to have with them tomorrow. I thought about some of the hot babes I had seen in the bar and knew I would soon be free to pursue them. I fell asleep with a smile in my heart. There was no more anguish for me as my course was plotted, and I knew where I was going. I awoke refreshed and ready for some fun. I took a shower, then went out for a nice breakfast and picked up some snacks in case I could not get away later. I went back to my room and called the local florist. I ordered a bouquet for Sarah. I had always given her one just like this on our anniversary. Since there would not be another anniversary, I wanted her to think about what she was jeopardizing. I asked for it to be delivered at 11:00 a.m. I hoped my timing might be good, but it didn't matter. The timing was perfect. They got dressed and went out for a while. When they came back, they began making out. They were soon naked, and he had just mounted her when there was a knock at the door. The florist delivered the flowers, and I could see a pensive look on Sarah's face before she became angry. She got out her cell phone and dialed. My cell phone was soon ringing. I answered, and we had a short conversation. "Hello. Hello, how are you doing?" "Not worth a damn. My wife is out drilling some other guy while I sit here getting more angry every time I think about it. Why do you ask? It's not like you give a damn." "Well, I just got a bouquet of flowers, just like you always get me for our anniversary. I wanted to know what you were doing." "I don't know how you could think I did that. First off, you and your rocket scientist boyfriend kept me in the dark about where you were going. Secondly, if I had sent you flowers, they would have been ragweed, and the card would have read to my cheating wife. That's not very nice. Right, and your little Frankie is? Maybe they will give you some idea of what you're throwing away." I saw a very stunned look on her face as I turned my phone off. She was soon dialing again, but of course there was no answer. She tried a few more times, then gave up. She told him what I had said, and he assured her that I would get over it. That was not going to happen until I was rid of the both of them. She wasn't in the mood for sex, but after a while she began to give in. So I called for a pizza delivery and ordered Sarah's favorite pizza. They arrived just as he was mounting her again. He was furious and said he would not pay, but the delivery guy checked the room number against his mobile. Frankie ended up paying because he was threatened to be reported to the police. They ate anyway, since they had already paid the entry fee. They ate their lunches, they talked for a while, and then Frankie was bugging her again. As they started to get a little of the sexy, I called out for her favorite sandwich from across my room and made an order with our local deli. The sandwich was brought up about a minute inside her, across the bar, no less. Sarah just stared at the sandwich when she saw him. He must have figured out where they were. I didn't let her down, and she proceeded to berate him for 20 minutes before he ended up telling me about my rocket scientist crack, as they thought I'd somehow hacked into her new email that he mentioned it in. She had finally caught on, and it only took her a while. One woman said to her husband, "Honey, she's smarter than that, and it would have been nothing for her." They got dressed and went out. She said when they come back, then keep her clean and dressed to go for their romantic date. She had promised to reward him tonight. They left, and I laughed so hard my eyes watered. The neighbors then took a shower and changed their clothes. Sarah then slipped into her sexiest lingerie and gave him a fashion show. So he tried to overstep themselves with her in sex, and she said that they had their date. I pondered how quickly her shock would manifest itself. She went and changed as well. She looked stunning. I knew I was running a bit of a risk with my surprise, but it would be funny if things worked out the way they had in my imagination. They went off together, and I stayed back, waiting for them to come. Back. They were back in about an hour, and Sarah bolted to the bathroom, stripping as she went into the shower. That woman was in there for what seemed like an eternity, and when she finally came out, her breasts and vaginal area were so red they stood out against the white. 2 sore, red welts across. Shit, they looked painful, and no little Frankie for a while there tonight either. Sarah lay back on the bed moaning. Frankie tried to cop a feel, and Jill went on all screaming that she was feeling crummy, and it wasn't time for any of this nonsense. She said there had to be something in the new lingerie that she was allergic to. Little did she know. Then I put together all my videos and made DVDs for the attorney as well as being Frankie's wife. I prepared everything and went to bed. A great day again that put back the smile on me. It seemed all was not well in paradise. Alas, its genesis lay with me, it appeared. By early Sunday morning, I called it quits and made my way back to the waterfront. When she got back home, Sarah would be in for a lot more hell. And then today it would end. Later that day, when Frankie dropped her off, he didn't even walk in the house carrying luggage. He just let her out. I was on the couch watching football and didn't even look away from the television as she walked in. And she said she's home and I just fuck her. And so she walked around, in between me and the TV, giving a sultry little smile at me. I figured that you would be happy to see me. You were not dead. What would give that idea? Do I look stupid to you since last time we spoke? I know you did, but I didn't. You are not an idiot. I've never thought otherwise. You know how you said that you liked me enough to push through? I mean, I loved you and all, but that shit was in the past. Even though I told you not to go with him after everything we had been through, my heart broke a little. My feelings were described to you, and it meant nothing. So whatever, as far as I was concerned, once you went off with him, then I couldn't give a shit if you came back or not. You feel like that about me? Well, trust me, you like hella fumbled fork and be converted to 4-H. I do not know if we will ever be possible. He pressed his plea. I do anything to make it up. In hindsight, I see that as was a massive error. Is there anything I can do? You can kneel down and eat my whatever. I can't do that. I know you won't do that, so I guess that tells me how much your promise to do anything to save our marriage is worth. It's worth about as much as your promise to be faithful when we married. I was thinking about you all the way home today. I really want to make love to you tonight. I need you. You need me. I don't think so. As far as making love to me tonight, there's not much chance. Did you have little Frankie use a condom every time he screwed you? No, he's married, and I can't have children. Do you think you're the only one he's used that routine with? You are now damaged goods as far as I am concerned. There is no way I would touch you until you have a clean bill of health from a doctor. Also, I don't do seconds. I know he's clean, but you could use a condom if you don't think so. Right, I'm going to use a rubber to screw my wife after she let some loser bareback her all weekend. You chose little Frankie over me. I'm going out for a while. I really can't stomach looking at your cheating ass anymore tonight. You can sleep in the guest room tonight. I like the master bedroom better, and unlike you, I didn't do anything wrong. Can we talk about this? We can talk tomorrow after you get back from work. I really don't know what else there is to discuss. I walked out of the house and went to a nearby bar and grill to get some supper and clear my head. Actually, my head was clear as I knew exactly what I was doing. I just wanted to get away from her. I don't really drink, so I just ate, then went for a long walk. When I got home, she was in my bed. I looked at her and told her to get the hell out of my bed. This is our bed. I have just as much right to be here as you do. The hell you do. You gave up that right when you screwed little Frankie. So you either get out of my bed or I'll drag your sorry ass out of here and toss you in the street. She began crying and slowly left the room. I closed and locked the door behind her. I could hear her still crying as she walked down the hallway. In the morning, I completely ignored her. We each had breakfast, and as she was leaving at her normal time, she turned and looked at me and told me that she loved me. I gave her a very scornful look and said that I had loved her too, making sure to emphasize the past tense. I saw tears starting as she turned and walked away. When she was gone, I began packing her things in garbage bags. I packed her stuff until I called Frankie's wife, Sarah. I asked her if she knew that her husband spent the weekend with my wife. She thought he had been away on business, so when I offered her copies of my evidence, she was very enthusiastic about the idea. I was stunned when she opened the door. She was absolutely stunning. I was at a loss for words and had to apologize to her. I blamed it on being stunned by her beauty, which of course was the truth. We got down to business, and I explained what had occurred over the weekend. She was furious, and we decided she would accompany me to the lawyer's office and see if he would take her case. He actually ended up taking her case and gave us a bit of a discount. I talked to him while she started filling out the paperwork. I stood to support Sarah, asked him if I had to wait for Frankie. She would be all right, he said, as long as she signed the papers in advance. Mom and I had lunch while they were getting her papers in order. I drove her home after she signed and went back to my place waiting for Sarah's call. I was to call Sarah that evening and let her know how it went. My phone rang about 3 o'clock. She was not a happy camper. What the hell is this? What the hell is what? Now I just got served with divorce papers, and Frank is getting sued for something. But it seems a little self-explanatory to me. I told you there would be blowback. You apparently didn't take me seriously. I never expected you to do this. Perhaps a new alarm should have been set when you came in and asked me, then just maybe your little Frankie thing would not be filling your head with all this crap guy. I am not speaking about this over the phone. I will see you when I get to my house. Then I just hung up on her. I even threw the garbage bags of her stuff onto front lawn and waited in impatient anxiety for my basket case to return. She flew off the handle as soon as she pulled into our driveway. I recorded this because I wanted to be able to get a restraining order from me. Shouted at me and cursed with saliva spraying out from her mouth. I sat and listened as she ranted to me. I finally gave in and initiated our final conversation. Hire me, you need to hush so we can talk. If not, then I will put your things in their car and you can leave. You never give it another thought until, why are you doing this to me? Do this to you? You stupid woman, you did this to me and to us. I told you several times not to do this and even begged you not to destroy our marriage. You chose to destroy our marriage, so why would you think I wasn't going to divorce you? You said you loved me. I did. I loved you more than anything, and you broke my heart as a reward. The obvious problem is that you didn't love me or respect me. I can't live with someone who has that low of an opinion of me. But I do love you. If you loved me, you would not have gone and drilled little Frankie this weekend. Why do you keep calling him little Frankie? I have video cameras in your room and recorded the entire weekend. It should be obvious why I call him little. The first time I saw his pathetic tool, I laughed until I cried. I wondered if you could even feel it inside you. I noticed that you weren't climaxing like you do when I drill you. We don't drill. We make love. That is the main difference. I want to say that at least you are right. We did really made love. My guess is you are going to wish for that back. On the plus side, you can now fuck whoever. There are a drop-in new guy every night. I don't want that. I want you and only you. Come on in, let's sit down for a little while. I apologize, Earth, but I'm rather pissy right now. However, I would never ever cause you physical harm. Although this is not the case for tiny Frankie. We hopped in and sat at the table, where we always did. Finally, the final time we sat together like this struck me hard. This time she started it, and I tried to catch my cool a little bit as not talking all too mean to her. You can't possibly kill Frank, could you? Why not? My marriage used to be kind of happy in a naive way. I mean, he has got to pay more than my lawsuit and the divorce that is happening right. I mean, he is basically not getting a divorce. His wife understood what we were after touched, and she said that he felt it was okay for him to do this. You believe that. That was a sleazy move to make me appear like evil, because he wants at your body. The wife talked to me the morning, and I provided her with my evidence. He had said he was away on business. We are now sharing a lawyer. He even cut us a volume deal. I really do, you said, what every man says only to manipulate, and then turns around like it's my fault. You would have lost your mind a long time ago. He knew his wife would have nothing to do with that. I don't believe you. Never in a million years would he do something like that. I, even to this day, do not wish to listen at my word. Precisely why you should be divorced by now. On the other hand, I really couldn't care less what you believe. The next time you phone him, he will tell her where to go to. So you are literally throwing me out. I am. The night you told me about your plan, I went into the guest room to think. I knew within an hour that I would divorce you. I spent Thursday buying the equipment I needed to gather my evidence and to hack into your email account. Friday, I went to the lawyer and began the divorce process. Why didn't you tell me you were going to divorce me? I would have stopped. I don't think you would have. It would just have made you angrier. I explained to you several times how I felt, but the decision had to be yours. You had to be the one to stop it, or you would have been mad at me forever. I noticed in your emails that what I said meant nothing to you, so I was sure I was doing the right thing. I didn't sign the papers until the next Friday when you were getting ready for your date. I can't believe that I was that stupid. Is there any chance that you could forgive me? Sarah, I loved you so much that I might have been able to forgive you. Last night I gave you a last chance and you blew it. I think I could possibly forgive you, but I would never trust you. I would be waiting every day for you to tell me you wanted to drill somebody else. I can't live like that. It's better we just finish it right now." She broke down and cried. I went on. "Unlike you, I have given this a lot of thought, but I always come up with the same answer. I am going to divorce you, and I am going to destroy little Frankie like he destroyed my marriage. You can call him before you leave and share a place or whatever. Don't try to use your credit cards. They have all been canceled. I left half the money in our checking account for you, but I took my name off of it. I will split our savings with you. You can keep your car, but you will have to make the payments on it. The only thing you can have is your own clothes and belongings. After all, living in the place, you can have as much furniture as your home should. The house is mine. If I do sell it, I'll gladly split the money with you. It all states so clear in the divorce papers. If you resist, I will use all my evidence and it will ultimately blow up in your face. I don't want to do that, but will if I have to. I won't fight it. This is all my fault. I just want to say I regret it. Of course you know the difference between a light bulb and cheating wife. No, what is it? You could unscrew a light bulb. She thought it wasn't that much fun. I was like, bitch, your time is up, and released her from my house. I loaded all her stuff into the car while she watched, crying. I opened the door for her while it was packed and handed her one more thing. That was her wedding ring that I had pounded into a pancake with the hammer. I replied that by now it's just scrap gold for her to sell. Her door shut behind me and I leaned down to kiss her forehead. I said my last words to her. "Goodbye, my love." I turned and walked back to my lonely house. I didn't even watch her drive away. I couldn't have, even if I wanted to. My eyes were filled with tears, and I cried for another hour until I was totally drained. It was time to consider my options. As I saw it, I had 3. 1, I could crawl inside a bottle and drink myself into a stupor. I barely drink and don't like the morning after, so that was no good. 2, I could make everyone happy and kill myself. I would not give her the satisfaction of doing that. 3, I could stand tall, clean and clear that my moral actions were not your mistake. Time to move on with dignity. The major one would not having Sarah around. That made me smile. With a grin I dialed Sarah's number. We organized having dinner together that night, and I knew the healing had begun. It could be we would still just in part become friends, or maybe if I play my cards right and keep repeating the photos of her walking around with hardly any clothes on through my mind like an hourglass, someone dropped it seemed so bad at a bowling alley, then perhaps I'd do even better next time.
I couldn't believe my ears. As I mingled with relatives at the family reunion, I overheard Rick, my brother-in-law, snickering with his friends. "Once I get that idiot sister-in-law out of the way, the family business will be all ours." A sinking feeling gripped my stomach. Rick had always been arrogant, but I never imagined he harbored such malicious intentions against me. I glanced across the room at my husband, Alan, laughing with his parents, oblivious to the venom spewing from his own brother's mouth. Later that evening, as Alan and I tucked our son, Oliver, into bed, I found myself at a loss for words. How could I shatter the illusion of our perfect family? Oliver's innocent eyes brimmed with love, and I couldn't bring myself to burden his young mind with the harsh reality. In the days that followed, I noticed subtle shifts in Alan's behavior. He grew more distant, often lost in thought, and our once effortless conversations became strained. I couldn't help but wonder if Rick had already planted seeds of doubt about me. One night, Alan broke the news that shook me to my core. My parents think it's a good idea to invest in Rick's new venture. He's got a solid business plan, and they believe it could be a game changer for the family. I tried to reason with him, expressing my concerns about Rick's motives, but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Alan's unwavering trust in his family blinded him to the potential consequences of such a risky investment. As the weeks passed, the strain between us intensified. Oliver, ever perceptive, picked up on the tension, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a somber silence. I couldn't bear to see my once happy family crumbling before my eyes. Desperate for answers, I confided in my closest friend, Samantha. Her unwavering support and objective perspective provided the clarity I needed. Together, we began gathering evidence of Rick's past misdeeds, slowly unraveling the web of lies he had carefully constructed. With each damning piece of information we uncovered, my resolve grew stronger. I knew I had to confront Rick, to expose his true nature before he succeeded in tearing my family apart. The stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined, but I was determined to fight for the truth, no matter the cost. In the following weeks, Rick's influence over my in-laws grew stronger. He painted me as a manipulative outsider, hell-bent on undermining the family's legacy. With each conversation, his poisonous words eroded their trust in me. "Marla's been filling your head with nonsense," Rick said during one of his frequent visits. "She's threatened by my success and is trying to sabotage the business deal." Alan's parents nodded solemnly, their expressions a mixture of concern and doubt. It broke my heart to see the once unshakable bond within our family fracturing. At home, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Alan, swayed by Rick's persuasive lies, became increasingly distant and argumentative. "Why can't you just support me on this?" he snapped one evening, after I voiced my reservations about the investment. "It's a fantastic opportunity, and you're letting your personal issues with Rick cloud your judgment." I recoiled at the harshness of his words, feeling helpless in the face of Rick's insidious machinations. Oliver, ever the sensitive child, retreated into himself, sensing the tension that permeated our once happy household. I ached to shield him from the turmoil, but the cracks in our family's foundation were becoming too prominent to ignore. "Dad's been acting weird lately." Oliver confided in me one night as I tucked him into bed. "Is everything okay?" I forced a reassuring smile, stroking his hair gently. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Everything will be all right." Even as the words left my lips, I felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. How could I mend what Rick had so skillfully torn apart? Desperate for a glimmer of hope, I clung to the evidence Samantha and I had gathered, determined to expose Rick's deceitful ways. But with each passing day, the task seemed more daunting, as his lies enveloped my family like a suffocating shroud. One evening, as Alan and I sat in stony silence over dinner, he dropped a bombshell that shattered what little remained of my optimism. "I've decided to go ahead with the investment," he stated flatly, avoiding my gaze. "Rick has assured me it's a solid opportunity, and my parents are fully on board." My heart sank as I realized the extent of Rick's manipulation. He had successfully driven a wedge between Alan and me, exploiting my husband's loyalty to his family for his own nefarious gains. "Alan, please," I pleaded, my voice trembling with emotion. "Can't you see what he's doing? He's using you, using all of us for his own benefit." But my words fell on deaf ears. Alan had made up his mind, and Rick's influence had taken root too deeply. As I lay awake that night, the weight of the situation bearing down on me, I knew I had to act decisively. Rick's treachery could no longer be tolerated. I would expose him, no matter the cost, and reclaim the family he had so callously sought to destroy. With Samantha's unwavering support, I doubled down on my efforts to expose Rick's true nature. We pored over financial records, scoured through emails, and followed every lead, no matter how small. Our diligence paid off when we uncovered evidence of Rick's embezzlement from the family business. Invoices for non-existent expenses, suspicious wire transfers, it was all there, meticulously documented, painting a damning picture of his greed and deceit. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I confronted Alan, determined to make him see the truth. "Rick has been stealing from the company," I stated bluntly, spreading the evidence across the kitchen table. "He's been siphoning funds for his own gain, and now he's trying to drag us all down with this bogus investment." Alan's brow furrowed as he examined the documents, his expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "This can't be right," he muttered, shaking his head. "Rick would never do something like this." I could see the internal struggle playing out on his face, the desire to trust his brother-in-law warring with the mounting evidence of betrayal. "Open your eyes, Alan," I pleaded, my frustration mounting. "He's been manipulating you, all of us, from the start. This is just the tip of the iceberg." For a moment, I thought I had finally gotten through to him. Alan's gaze met mine, a flicker of doubt crossing his features. But then, as if a switch had been flipped, his expression hardened. "This is just another one of your schemes," he spat, pushing the documents away. "You're so desperate to turn me against my own family that you'd resort to fabricating evidence." His words stung like a physical blow, and I recoiled at the venom in his tone. How could he still be so blind to Rick's machinations? In the days that followed, the tension in our household was palpable. Alan and I barely spoke, our interactions reduced to terse exchanges and icy glares. Oliver, sensing the rift between us, retreated further into himself, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a somber silence that broke my heart. It was during one of these strained silences that I noticed a flicker of doubt cross Alan's face. He had been studying the investment paperwork, his brow furrowed in concentration, when suddenly his eyes narrowed. "Something's not adding up," he murmured, more to himself than to me. Seizing the opportunity, I approached him cautiously, pointing out the discrepancies I had noticed. The inflated projections, the questionable financial backing, the inconsistencies in Rick's pitch. For the first time, I saw the scales begin to tip in my favor. Alan's unwavering faith in his brother-in-law wavered as the evidence mounted, and the cracks in Rick's carefully constructed facade started to show. The arguments that followed were intense, with tempers flaring and voices raised. But through it all, I clung to the hope that Alan was finally seeing the truth, that the person he had trusted implicitly was nothing more than a master manipulator driven by greed and selfishness. As the dust settled, a newfound determination took root within me. Rick's deceit would no longer be tolerated, and I would stop at nothing to expose him, even if it meant risking the fragile bonds that remained within our fractured family. The next family gathering was a tense affair, with undercurrents of mistrust and animosity simmering beneath the surface. I could feel Rick's eyes boring into me, his smug expression a silent challenge. Mustering my courage, I approached him as he mingled with his cronies, the evidence of his misdeeds clutched tightly in my hand. "We need to talk," I stated firmly, my voice carrying across the room. Rick's eyes narrowed, but he quickly plastered on a false smile. "Of course, dear sister-in-law. What seems to be the problem?" I handed him the stack of documents, my hand trembling slightly with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. "These are records of your embezzlement from the family business," I stated, my voice unwavering. "Proof of your lies and deceit." A hush fell over the room as heads turned in our direction, the weight of my accusation hanging heavy in the air. For a moment, Rick's composure faltered, his eyes widening ever so slightly, but he quickly regained his footing, letting out a dismissive chuckle. "Really, Marla? Falsifying documents now?" He shook his head, his gaze sweeping across the gathered family members. "This is just another one of her pathetic attempts to undermine me." I opened my mouth to protest, but Rick cut me off, his voice dripping with contempt. "Don't think I don't know what you're up to," he sneered, taking a step closer. "You're threatened by my success, by the respect I've earned within this family, so you resort to these petty tactics, trying to turn everyone against me." My hands clenched into fists at my sides as Rick's words washed over me, each syllable dripping with venom. I could see the doubt flickering in the eyes of my relatives, their allegiances wavering. Alan stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Marla, is this true? Have you been fabricating evidence?" The weight of his question hung in the air, and I felt the eyes of the entire room upon me. In that moment, I realized the enormity of what was at stake. Not just the exposure of Rick's deceit, but the very fabric of our family's trust. Swallowing hard, I met Alan's gaze. "No," I stated firmly. "Every document, every piece of evidence is legitimate. I would never stoop to such levels." Rick scoffed, but I pressed on, my voice gaining strength with each word. "Look at the records, Alan. Look at the wire transfers, the bogus invoices. It's all there, plain as day. Rick has been stealing from the business, from our family, for years." A heavy silence blanketed the room as my words sank in, the weight of the accusation hanging thick in the air. I could see the conflict playing out on Alan's face, the struggle between his loyalty to his brother-in-law and the nagging doubts that had taken root. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "I need proof," he said, his voice low and measured. "Concrete, irrefutable proof of what you're claiming." A surge of determination coursed through me. If proof was what he needed, then proof I would give him. "You'll have it," I promised, my gaze unwavering. "And when you do, you'll see Rick for the liar and manipulator he truly is." As the gathering dispersed, the tension lingering in the air, I knew that the battle lines had been drawn. It was time to take the gloves off and fight for the truth, no matter the cost. The tension in the air was palpable as the family gathered for the emergency meeting. Accusations had been hurled, loyalties tested, and the once solid foundation of our clan had started to crumble. Rick strode into the room, his cocky demeanor a stark contrast to the somber expressions of the others. He shot me a smug glance, as if taunting me to make my next move. Alan cleared his throat, his expression grave. "We're here to address the allegations made against Rick." I could feel every eye on me as I rose from my seat, clutching the recording device in my trembling hand. This was it, the moment of truth. "I have proof," I announced, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. Proof of Rick's deceit and his intentions to undermine this family for his own gain. Rick scoffed, but I pressed on, hitting the play button on the recorder. His voice, smug and self-assured, filled the room. "Once I get that idiot sister-in-law out of the way, the family business will be all ours." A collective gasp rippled through the room as the damning words echoed off the walls. I watched as the color drained from Rick's face, his mask of arrogance slipping away. That's not what it sounds like," he stammered, his eyes darting around the room in desperation. But the recording played on, each sentence a nail in the coffin of his lies. Been siphoning funds for years. Bogus investment turned the family against her. By the time the recording ended, the room was deathly silent, the weight of the truth hanging heavy in the air. All eyes were fixed on Rick, the once untouchable golden boy now exposed as a fraud and a manipulator. Alan's expression was one of utter disbelief, a mixture of anger and hurt etched onto his features. "How could you?" he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. Rick opened his mouth, no doubt to spew forth more lies, but Alan held up a hand, silencing him. "No more," he said, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You've done enough damage." In that moment, it was as if the scales had fallen from everyone's eyes. The web of deceit that Rick had so carefully woven was unraveling before our very eyes, and the true depths of his betrayal were laid bare. One by one, family members rose to their feet, their expressions a mixture of disgust and outrage. Even Rick's most ardent supporters couldn't deny the damning evidence. "You're finished," Alan's father spat, his face twisted with anger. "Get out of my sight and never show your face here again." Rick's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, his once smug demeanor reduced to a pathetic display of stammering and denial. As he was unceremoniously escorted from the room, his protests falling on deaf ears, I felt a sense of vindication wash over me. The battle had been long and hard fought, but in the end, the truth had prevailed. Yet even as I basked in the victory, a pang of sadness tugged at my heart. This was my family, fractured and torn apart by the very person who should have been its strongest ally. The road to healing would be long and arduous, but I knew we would walk it together, stronger and wiser for the trials we had endured. As the dust settled and the adrenaline began to fade, I turned to Alan, our eyes meeting in a silent exchange of understanding and shared relief. The worst was over, but the real work was just beginning. In the aftermath of Rick's stunning downfall, the family was in turmoil. Loyalties were divided, with some still clinging to the belief that he had been wronged, while others rallied around Alan and me, determined to excise the cancer that had festered within our ranks. Rick, however, was not one to go down without a fight. Bitter and vengeful, he launched a campaign of lies and manipulation, attempting to turn the tide of opinion back in his favor. "She's been plotting this from the start," he hissed to anyone who would listen. "Marla's always been jealous of my success, and she saw an opportunity to take me down." His words were like poison, seeping into the minds of the more gullible family members, sowing seeds of doubt and mistrust. But I was no longer the meek, passive woman he had once dismissed. With Alan's unwavering support and the weight of the truth on my side, I pushed back against Rick's slander, countering his lies with irrefutable evidence and heartfelt pleas. "Look at the facts," I implored our relatives, laying out the paper trail of Rick's misdeeds. "He's the one who betrayed us, who put his own greed above the family's well-being." It was an uphill battle, but slowly the tide began to turn. Those who had once been swayed by Rick's silver tongue saw the truth for what it was, and their allegiance shifted back to the family's side. Still, Rick remained defiant, his desperation mounting with each blow to his crumbling facade. It was during one of these tense standoffs that he crossed a line, threatening me with veiled implications of violence. "You'll regret this," he snarled, his face twisted with rage. "No one crosses me and gets away with it." I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated by his hollow threats. But Alan, ever the protector, would not let such an affront go unanswered. In a blur of motion, he lunged forward, grabbing Rick by the collar and slamming him against the wall. "Don't you ever threaten her again," he growled, his face inches from Rick's. "Or I swear, I'll make you regret the day you were born." The raw fury in Alan's voice sent a chill down my spine, but I couldn't deny the swell of pride and love I felt in that moment. This was the man I had married, strong, loyal, and fiercely protective of those he loved. Rick, for once, was rendered speechless, his bravado crumbling in the face of Alan's righteous anger. It was a pivotal moment, a symbolic shifting of power that left no doubt as to who held the moral high ground. As Alan released his grip, Rick slunk away, his tail firmly between his legs. It was a humiliating defeat, witnessed by those who had once revered him as the golden child. In the days that followed, the family rallied around us, offering their support and condemnation of Rick's actions. The once fractured clan was slowly mending, united in their determination to move forward and leave the toxic legacy of betrayal behind. Yet, even as the dust settled and a sense of normalcy began to return, I couldn't shake the feeling that Rick's story was not yet over. He was a cornered animal, backed into a corner of his own making, and I knew from experience that such creatures were capable of lashing out with desperate, unpredictable fury. But I was no longer afraid. With Alan by my side and the truth as our shield, we were ready to face whatever Rick threw our way. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over. With Rick's deceit exposed and his influence over the family shattered, Alan and I turned our focus to restoring order and trust within the business. It was a daunting task, made all the more challenging by the lingering doubts and divisions that Rick's machinations had sown. We pored over financial records, untangling the web of lies and cover-ups that had been woven over the years. Each discrepancy, each hidden transaction, was like a dagger to the heart, a stark reminder of the depth of Rick's betrayal. As the true extent of the damage became clear, Alan's parents struggled with a deep sense of guilt and shame. How could they have been so blind to the deceit unfolding right under their noses? "We trusted him implicitly," Alan's mother confessed, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "He was family, and we never imagined he could be capable of such treachery." It was a sentiment echoed by many, a collective reckoning with the harsh reality that even those closest to us can harbor the darkest of intentions. But through it all, Alan and I remained steadfast in our resolve to rebuild what had been torn asunder. We held meetings, both formal and informal, to address the lingering concerns and doubts that had taken root. With patience and understanding, we listened to the grievances of those who had been swayed by Rick's lies, offering reassurance and a path forward. It was a slow and often frustrating process, but gradually the cracks began to mend. Trust, once shattered, was painstakingly rebuilt, one honest conversation at a time. As the business stabilized, we turned our attention to the legal ramifications of Rick's actions. With the evidence we had gathered, the authorities had no choice but to pursue charges for embezzlement and fraud. The day Rick was taken into custody, a hush fell over the family. There was no joy, no sense of triumph, only a profound sadness that it had come to this. Family bonds, once cherished, had been irreparably severed by greed and deceit. In the aftermath, we sought solace in professional counseling, recognizing the need for outside guidance to navigate the complex emotions and trauma we had endured. It was a humbling experience, but one that ultimately brought us closer together as a family. During one particularly poignant session, Alan's father broke down, his stoic facade crumbling as he confronted the depth of his own culpability. "I should have seen it," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have protected you all from his poisonous influence." In that moment, I felt a profound sense of empathy wash over me. For all the pain and turmoil Rick had caused, he was still a part of this family, and his actions had left wounds that would take time and care to heal. As the weeks turned to months, a sense of normalcy began to return, tempered by a newfound appreciation for the bonds that had been tested and ultimately strengthened. Alan and I found ourselves drawing closer than ever, united in our shared triumph over adversity. It was during this period of healing and growth that we made the decision to renew our vows, a symbolic gesture of our unwavering commitment to one another and to the family we had fought so hard to protect. As I stood before Alan, surrounded by the loved ones who had weathered the storm alongside us, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and hope. The road had been long and arduous, but we had emerged from the crucible of betrayal stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. In the months following our vow renewal, the family business began to thrive once more, the dark cloud of Rick's deceit finally lifting. With honesty and transparency at the helm, we regained the trust of our partners and clients, and the company's reputation was restored. Yet, even as we celebrated our professional successes, there was a deeper, more personal victory that filled me with a profound sense of gratitude. The strength of our family bonds forged anew in the crucible of adversity. Gone were the days of whispered secrets and veiled accusations. In their place was a newfound openness, a commitment to communication and understanding that had been sorely lacking before. I would often catch Alan's parents sharing a knowing glance, their eyes shining with a mix of pride and relief. They had come perilously close to losing everything they held dear, and the lessons learned had left an indelible mark. "We're lucky to have you, Marla," Alan's mother confided one evening as we sipped tea on the patio. "If it weren't for your strength and perseverance, who knows where we'd be right now." Her words, spoken with such sincerity, brought tears to my eyes. For so long, I had felt like an outsider, forever seeking acceptance and validation within this family. Now, at last, I felt truly seen and valued for who I was. Oliver, too, seemed to blossom in the newfound atmosphere of trust and stability. Gone was the somber, withdrawn child who had borne witness to the family's turmoil. In his place was a vibrant, confident young man, secure in the knowledge that the bonds that held us together were unbreakable. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he whispered one night as I tucked him into bed, his eyes shining with admiration. "You never gave up, even when things looked really bad." In that moment, I felt a surge of pride and love so intense, it threatened to overwhelm me. Through it all, the lies, the betrayal, the darkest moments when hope seemed lost, Oliver had been my guiding light, my unwavering reminder of what truly mattered. As the days turned to weeks and the weeks to months, our family settled into a new normal, one built on the hard-won lessons of the past. There were still moments of tension, of course, as old wounds took time to fully heal, but we faced them head-on, with open hearts and a willingness to truly listen and understand one another. And through it all, Alan remained my steadfast partner, my rock in the storm. His unwavering love and support had been the bedrock upon which our family's redemption was built, and I found myself falling deeper in love with him with each passing day. It was on a warm summer evening, as we sat side by side on the porch swing, watching Oliver chase fireflies in the twilight, that I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The battles had been fought, the demons laid to rest, and we had emerged victorious, our bond stronger than ever before. "Can you believe how far we've come?" I murmured, leaning my head against Alan's shoulder. He smiled, his eyes filled with a mix of joy and hard-won wisdom. It wasn't an easy road, but it was worth every step. And in that moment, as the fireflies danced around us like tiny beacons of hope, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. A family united, resilient, and unbreakable.